The final out on ESPN, New York shut out Boston 4-0 to advance to the next round. The Detroit Tigers and Chicago Cubs also advanced. I'm Dave Anthony, and this is Fox News.
Lawrence County depends on WDXE News, on the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 1053-953 WDXE.
And it's Friday, and it's time for Bulletproof Estate Planning with my good friend Stan Pierchoski. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing fine, and good morning, Jeff.
Good morning to you. Good morning. What a beautiful week we've had, and a beautiful weekend headed into that. You know, and I guess you've been busy.
I've been busy, and I noticed this morning it was 53 degrees or something. When I woke up, I told my wife, I said, October finally has arrived.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we'll be complaining about the cold before you know it, but for now, I'm just going to enjoy the cool air in the morning. It just feels wonderful. 62
right now, so that's a nice morning.
Yeah. We have been busy. We're always busy, and sometimes that is a concern of mine. But just, but it's good. It's a good problem to have, of course.
Yeah.
You know, but I missed the word of the day on the way over for some reason. Oh, I know what it was. Over the weekend, my truck just quit, and I determined it was the battery.
Yeah.
And when I looked at the battery, the sticker on it said February 19th. So I thought, well, I sure got my money's worth out of that one.
Yes.
Yeah. And I got a new battery. Of course, that resets everything on the radio. And so when I was trying, and it's got a blue, it's got like a blue LED.
Yeah.
And I just can't hardly see it if there's any light at all out. Maybe at night I can see it, but so I couldn't see the numbers to know the rate. So I'm just scrolling through, and I felt like I went through the band several times before it locked in. And when it came on, you guys were talking about the Russell quote.
You may know this word.
Okay.
It was gibbous.
Gibbous?
Gibbous.
I might have to say. I might have to.
It's Gebbous. Gibbous.
G-I.
G-I. I'm sorry. I said G-E. It's G-I.
Gibbous. Okay. No, I don't know it. So.
Well, it's a half lit up moon, is what it is.
Gosh, I always thought that went by the
waxing gibbous moon provided the perfect light for a night of a spooky storytelling.
I always use the very technical and confusing term half moon.
Half moon, yes. Yes, so there you go. I have a question for you.
Those are words you can impress people at parties.
I know you've got a seminar coming up a little later.
I do.
We'll talk about that, but you know, the government shutdowns happened.
It did.
And so it dawned on me that, the Medicaid program, does it affect that at all?
Not to my knowledge.
I wondered.
Because the Medicaid program, well, you got to think of the Medicaid program in general. Medicaid, we got Medicare and Medicaid.
Yes.
A lot of people get confused about that, so I want to make clear. We're talking about Medicaid. Medicaid is governed by the individual states.
Okay.
However, a lot of their funding comes from the Federal Medicaid Act.
Yes.
And the Federal Medicaid Act, one beautiful bill, added $200 billion to it. So that's already there.
Okay.
And I don't know when it actually got distributed, but it does. So
there should be plenty of money for the Medicaid program.
And I suspect it would be a while before, because that's like an annual, kind of an annual or a semi-annual funding.
Yeah.
So and the money's already been distributed, as far as I know. So it's not like the shutdown, because the shutdown really going to employ people that work and get periodic payments and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Now, maybe periodic distributions of property on some programs might be affected. I'm not the expert on government shutdown. Maybe somebody ought to be, because it seems to happen often enough. But even when it happens, it doesn't ever seem to be that big of a deal.
No, it doesn't.
I remember one time.
It's a big deal to them for some reason, but it doesn't seem to be a big deal to us.
Well, and we'll see. I think it's a mistake for them to do it, because the people that suffer the worst are the people, But it's always the same story. They shut down. Everybody's complaining about this. They wait a little while, then one side or both sides just fold, and they end up passing something and opening it. Everybody that didn't get paid gets back paid.
Yeah.
They get it all. I'm sure it's uncomfortable when you're not getting it at the time.
That's true.
But they get it back. But it's always the same story.
Well, they're very good at creating a crisis so they can pass something bigger than they should have to start with.
That's right. And they got, when you think about it, they kind of got one basic job.
Yeah.
All elected officials have one predominant job. We are a sovereign nation. And when you're an elected official, your primary concern is protection of the citizens of that sovereign nation. And that protection, that reaches in a lot of different directions, not just physical protection like against invasions or war or enemies, but it's protection. It's protection for all the things that they've put into place that fall under protection. And so when you just get into this kind of a argument and shut things down, it's they're losing track of that goal.
Right.
And we the voters need to remind them of that. Is what in my they need to know. You don't just do what you want; you do what we want. That's the way it works.
Supposed to be.
Well, we need to remind them.
Yeah.
If somebody walked in here right now, it's like, don't you put your, don't you put your feet up on my desk? You sit back and I'll put my feet up on your desk. You work for me.
Yeah.
Don't you ever forget it.
Yeah.
And they forget it all the time. And we forget it and we don't call them on it.
Yeah.
We don't call them on it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, because, what will happen is somebody, I was listening to somebody, I can't remember, that was saying that the way these, I think it was Newt Gingrich, who used to be the Speaker of the House, and he'd seen many of these, and he said usually some kind of an event will pop up, like an air traffic control something, and they'll say, okay, we can't leave this thing shut down because it's getting dangerous, stuff or something like that. Was one example he gave. I can't remember some of the other ones, but usually that'll be the situation. But, But anyway, the demands are being made just can't possibly be given into, and they won't go through because if the I think, well, I don't want to get into politics, but I'm just saying, there's no way that's going to happen because there's a two-tier system they got to get by. I mean, Trump has even said, if first of all, Congress and Senate are not going to fold on that issue because that's the mandate of the vote of the election last year, right? But if they did have a moment of weakness and fold and pass something like that, Trump said he's going to veto it, and then they don't have a.
So then they don't
have the 2/3.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think so either. But I'm just saying, it's like, why bother doing it because it's never going to get passed.
Yeah.
So,
yep,
and again, that would be, the whole thing is promises made, promises kept, and he's going to keep this one, so he's not going to fold. So, anyway,
but you answered my question though about the Medicaid funding should not be hampered.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing and I think I bring it up from time to time on the show. And the Medicare and Medicaid, folks, and I don't blame them for getting confused, but they are two way different things.
Yes.
They sound so much alike. They both came into existence at the same time, 1965, during the Johnson administration. And they sound a lot alike, but they are very, very different. So I often make this analogy, and I think I made it not too long ago, but Medicaid is a federal act. It's called the Medicaid Act.
Right.
And it has all the rules of what Medicaid is. But each state has their own version of it, and they're allowed to do whatever they want as long as they stay within the constraints of the federal act. So I like to make this analogy because it's on radio and I can't use my whiteboard, right?
Yeah.
The federal act is like this big bubble, thinking about the size of a beach ball, right?
Right.
And that's the Medicaid Act. Inside this bubble are 50 smaller bubbles.
Right.
Now the 50 smaller bubbles can be anywhere they want to be inside the big bubble. They just can't escape the big bubble.
That's right.
So there's certain rules that they cannot get past. But since they can move around inside the big bubble, there's certain rules they can do or not do.
Right.
And a lot of those 50 bubbles in there, those are the 50 states, and a lot of those may overlap each other a little bit, and they do. So like we have, like Tennessee's an income cap state on Medicaid. There's a cap on the amount of income you have for eligibility.
Right.
And a lot of I think there's 40% of the 50 states that have an income cap. So there's a lot of similarities between states, but when you get right down to it, there are 50 sets of rules. Even the states that are very similar have some individual nuances that they make their own. And so there's 50 actual set of rules. And we run into that a lot when we deal with families, and they'll call me and say, well, we're trying to do this, and I heard you on the radio, but they told my brother he couldn't do this, and the brother ends up living in Florida. And so there's different rules. So whenever I talk about this stuff, I'm always talking about our little bubble inside the big bubble is called TennCare.
Yeah.
That's our version of it.
Yes.
Not all states have a cute little name, but some do. I mean, like Alabama got real creative. We call it TennCare. California calls it CalMed, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Alabama got real creative, and they call theirs Alabama Medicaid.
They kept it simple.
They just didn't want to spend any brain cells coming up with a name on that one. But
so Alabama Medicaid.
That's the difference between two. And again, it's funded. I mean, the states fund it too. Okay, we have the states fund it with private pay, and the states fund it with estate recovery when they go after property after death. But usually a state recovery doesn't recover much. In other words, there's two states that are trying to opt out and trying to abolish their state recovery because they say it's like they spend, I don't know, I forget the numbers, but they spend $50 million a year on a state recovery, but only recover 20 million. So it's a loss.
It's a losing proposition.
And they just said, why bother? Let's go economically. But they're not going to be able to opt out of it yet because the federal Medicaid Act requires each state to have a state recovery program. So honestly, they said they tried to abolish it, but I don't see that be successful unless they modify the other one.
Yeah.
But so they fund themselves to some extent, but then they get federal funding.
Okay.
So, and like, here's a good example. You often hear me talk about the thing called the 5-year rule, right?
Yes.
Well, not getting into the 5-year rule, but the 5-year rule used to be a 3-year rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in 2006, the feds put out, actually I think they put out in 2005, Tennessee adopted in 2006, the Deficit Reduction Act, which had a bunch of change of rules in it.
Yes.
And one of the things was they said, change the look-back rule from 3 years to 5. Now, it was up to the states to adopt it or not adopt it. And 49 states did. Now, California is the only state that didn't adopt it. And I know that sort of sounds like it might be an advantage, but it's not out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you adopt it, you get certain federal funding that you don't get if you don't adopt it. So they dangle the carrot, which is the money.
Right.
I mean, they fund the states to some extent anyway, but they'll angle extra money if you follow their lead. And of course, all the states do because they want the money. They don't really, don't give any thought to what the condition is. They just say, we want the money. They think that's the smart thing to do. It's not always a smart thing to do. But, it reminds me of like a DUI law. You remember when DUI, I don't know if you ever got into this end of it, but, there used to be a 0.08 blood alcohol content was what it was, right?
Yep, I remember that.
And I can't remember the year, but I want to say somewhere around 07 or something like that, 2007. The federal rule came out. I mean, not the federal rule, but the rule came out saying we're going to make it 0.8, 0.1. It came out in other documentation like the funding you get for your highways and roads and stuff like that. They said if you adopt the 0.1 and raise it from 0.08 to 0.1, there's money in it for you, state money. Yeah. And I think everybody adopted that. So and just get, I mean, I'm not saying that's good or bad to do it. I'm just saying they'll dangle money, and that usually gets most people most states to chime into the program, whatever it is. But they do that a lot. So, but like I said, I'm not the expert on this. I'm sure somebody else is more. But as far as the Medicaid program, it's not a program. I think that government would have to be shut down for like at least a year before that would have any effect whatsoever.
Sure.
But the periodic payments that are made to keep the government open and running are usually the periodic payments. I think the bulk one of it is paychecks. Yeah. But there's probably other things that are periodic like that as well. I mean, there's certain, if it would probably, if let's say the government was leasing a building, that would, they paid and they made a maybe not an annual lease, but maybe a monthly lease or something like that. That would fall into that category.
Interesting. So yeah, it would. I guess it would.
I mean, it's a mess, but we've seen this movie a million times, and it's going to end the same, I'm sure.
Yeah, it should. It should and will.
But, anyway,
this too shall pass, as they say.
You did mention my seminar. Let me just get that out of the way.
Yeah, let's do that.
On Saturday, the 22nd of November. So we do these about every other month. We just had one Saturday or so ago, back on the 20th, right here at WLX, and I think we talked about it. Boy, we had a crowd. I remember
you did.
We had such a crowd. We used all the tables, and then we put some chairs out that didn't have tables. Yeah. And they kept coming, and I looked around and I counted 8 more chairs, but those chairs had stuff on them. They were down there by where they play. Yeah. Had like an amplifier sitting on it or a pile of cords, and I thought, I'll have to scarf them if I need to. Yeah. But we didn't. But it was that full. I mean, I often say, here in the Star Theater are big. I don't worry about maxing them out. Yeah. It seems like I'm going to start worrying about maxing it out now. Yeah, that's okay. I'm not sure what I do as far as additional chairs for that, but I'll have to figure out a solution to that.
Excellent.
But anyway,
that's good to hear.
Next one's November the 22nd. Now, by popular demand, we're going to cater to our northern listeners a little more, because that one's going to be up in Franklin. It's going to be at the Williamson County Public Library. And it's going to be November the 22nd, which is Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning. It's the seminar we usually do called Wills, Trust in the Nursing Home. And, you know, it's not too early to RSVP for that if you want to, because it's, we already got some. So it's not a bad drive up there, especially on a Saturday morning.
That's right.
You know, a lot better than trying to negotiate it.
That is a beautiful facility too, by the way.
I've not seen it. I think we talked about that, and you said you've been there.
I've been there. It's very nice.
Okay.
Very large and should accommodate you well.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping to get a good turnout, or like I said, hope it is. Like I said, the girls that do that scouted it out. We had a venue up there, but they remodeled and changed what they really do, and it's really not suitable to us anymore. But so we've been looking since mid-year.
Yeah.
And they came up with that. You have to book it like, I would say 3 months in advance or something like that. So we booked it. We're going to go with it. We'll see how it turns out. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yep.
I can talk anywhere. I can go out in your parking lot and give an hour lecture if I was so inclined and not minded a bit.
Yeah, I understand. I totally get it. Yeah, I actually had a library card from there. I used to get library cards from the places I traveled, and I would I would get books on CD, you know, and listen to books as I moved from place to place, and then return them. And so I had a Franklin Library, a Williamson County Library card. I had a Giles County. Had a what's Fayetteville?
Lincoln County.
Lincoln County. I think of Lincoln County. So I had these libraries that I would pass. Of course, our own library here.
Yeah.
And there's books on CD. You can listen to books.
You know, when I was a kid,
traveling.
when I was a kid, libraries where you had to go to learn something.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
I mean, now you got the internet, which is I don't mock it a bit. It's great for information.
And of course, now if you want to learn something, you listen to WDXE.
That's right. That's exactly right. Talk radio, WDXE.
That's right.
But yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to learn how to develop film.
Oh yeah.
It was color was kind of new back then, but it was out.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, I had a 127 millimeter black and white camera.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know how to do it. So I went to the library and got some books and read up on it and found a place that sold some of the equipment and buy the chemicals, and I turned my really dungy kind of basement we had in our house into a dark room. And I did that. You know.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But now you learn a lot of stuff online. It's easier to get. But that's how I had several things like that. I remember studying transistors. They were new. Can you imagine that?
Transistors
I really sound
were new.
old. I really sound old. I was about 11 or 12 years old, and transistors were brand new because everybody had the transistor radio.
Yes.
And I always had an interest in electronics. And I got this book. It was about 4 inches thick. It was like a textbook.
Oh man.
I remember it was even my dad or my brother said, "You'll never read that." So but I checked it out of the library, and you get it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think I rechecked it like 3 times.
Yeah.
And I read the most of that, and I started soldering up some circuit boards.
Well, that's
with
good
it
for you.
to learn how that stuff works. Of course, now that's ancient technology.
I wish I had studied electronics a little more. I don't know. I'm ignorant when it comes to.
Actually, transistors still exist. They're just in those chips that you see all the time, and there's many of them in there.
Yeah.
They're smaller, but they still work the same. They got 3 terminals, and they either conduct or they don't conduct. But it's kind of like a transistor. Really is either a switch or an amplifier.
Yeah.
That's if we're going to sum it down, to distill it down to what it really is. That's what it is. But
wow.
Very small switch and a very powerful small amplifier.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Totally amazing.
But I'm not talking about anything I was supposed to talk about.
Well, I know, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Right.
We've got Stan Pierchoski. By the way, it's an interactive program if you'd like to know a little bit about estates, wills, trust, estate planning, that kind of thing, nursing home, that kind of stuff, 766-9393. And of course, we've got one of our regulars who calls. And let's see what she's got on her mind this morning. Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. I've got a question or comment on Mr. Pierchoski, because I look at it this way. I know my situation, but I talk to people, and invariably I talk to somebody that has a situation very different. I was talking to a businesswoman this week, Sharp, and something came up about her mother or something, and she was not familiar with the qualifying asset trust. That, let's say you got a house under contract, but you didn't put all your money, like Social Security coming in. And so I was kind of under the impression, and I think I was wrong when he covered that's a separate trust. But I told her, I said, I'm not going to explain this to you. I just gave her, and she could pull up the website to see if it applied to her, because she doesn't know me well enough, and I'm not a lawyer. But I thought that some of those points, because I kind of assumed you didn't have to wait 5 years on that, but it's got in my understanding, it has a look-back period. If he would cover a little bit of that again, because sometimes mine is explaining to people. And the second thing is with Social was, this was for people who were paying by check that they now have to do it online, and if they didn't have that together, their checks might be affected.
Okay.
And another thing is qualifying for Medicare. Somebody needs to be with them when they set the goals. There are two ways you can come off of Medicare. Well, there's more than that, but one is you can't reach the goals, and two is they're setting goals that you can reach too fast, or you think that that's what they're after. It's progress. And they were actually setting goals for my mother, had I not intervened, wanting her to stand up and go to the refrigerator. She could hardly get in and out of her wheelchair, and it's based on what you have when you go in there. They could have stopped her Medicare if I didn't intervene on several things like that that she couldn't do before she came. Just wanted to point those things out.
All right. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm sure Stan can comment on some of that stuff. No
Well,
doubt.
the last thing about Medicare, I don't really deal with Medicare. I deal with
Yeah.
Medicaid.
Yeah.
Medicare is the insurance and stuff like that. And they have all kind of rules about what you can do and what you can't do. Like when you rehabilitate,
Right.
whatever. So I can't get into that, and those facts were pretty cryptic. That I couldn't really piece that part together. But it has to do with Medicare. That's getting out of my lane. We deal with Medicare ever so slightly sometimes whenever people are on that what they call the 100-day window and stuff like
Yes.
that. But I mean, still never even into the care aspect or the insurance end of it.
Right.
But the first part, I'm not familiar with the trust they mentioned, qualified something trust, but I think I can answer the question because whatever kind of trust it is or whatever you were referring to, she mentioned something about putting the house into it. And
So I think she might have been talking about an asset protection.
I think so too, but I think the gist of the question was, she thought the look back period did not apply to that.
Okay.
Right, and it does. I mean, that's not right. Don't go down that road because you can make a mistake that way. When you put property, and this is worth talking about because it has to do with this 5-year rule, which is very confusing to people.
Yes.
And so I'll just start from a little more fundamental because I'm a firm believer in understanding the fundamentals. And if you deal with the fundamentals, you can always kind of nuke out a circumstance if you stick with the fundamentals, because those stay the same no matter what.
Right.
And the fundamental about this 5-year look-back rule is it only applies if you're going to give something away. Now, I say give away or use the word gift. When I do that, the actual term for it is called a divestment.
Yes.
But that's kind of one of those words that maybe you don't know what it means. I mean, but gifting away means you got to give something up and not get anything in return.
Yes.
Okay. That's why I use the word gift. It implies you're giving something and not getting it back. Doing now.
Yes.
So when people come to me and say, "Hey, I want to go to Jeff's Realty company and sell my house, but I'm so afraid of that 5-year rule thing," it's like, has nothing to do with that. Sell the house, because what do you get when you sell the house? I mean, you get money.
Right.
In other words, if you look from an asset standpoint, you still have the asset. It just changed posture from real estate to money, right?
Right.
It's a $500,000 house. It's a $500,000 asset. If you sell it and get a $500,000 check, you still have a $500,000 asset. Nothing has changed. You've not given anything away.
Right.
Just changed the posture of the asset. So you got to get out of that mode of thinking of what it is. You know what I mean? It's an asset. It has value. That's a fundamental. Now, so the 5-year rule has nothing to do if you're going to sell your house. It can, but I don't want to confuse the issue. It can if you undersell it. But I'm not going to get into that just yet. But so the 10 care rules say if you give anything away for less than market value, and actually if you don't believe me, go to the 10 care website and somewhere on there, if you just Google 10 care application, you'll get a page and it says click on here for a paper application, and I think you got to click it in English or whatever language you want to do, and you click it. And then you get down to like almost the second to last question on the 16-page application is a question that says, did you ever give anything away for less than market value? And then if the answer is yes, it's what, when, how much, what was it worth, on it, the details of that. And that's why they're asking this question. Because if you give, 10 care law says if you give something away, meaning you divest yourself of it and don't get anything in return for it, it satisfies their requirement of a divestment.
Yes.
Now, another way to think of it is an uncompensated transfer. You're not getting anything for it.
Right.
So now, when they say if you do that, now they don't care if you give it to your kid or you give it to the church or do whatever, or dispose of it. If you divest yourself of it and don't get anything for it, that's going to trigger this 5-year rule, because what they're going to do is impose a penalty period on you if you apply for care within 5 years of that divestment.
That's right.
Okay, now, when we do a trust, and a trust has absolutely nothing to do with 10-care law, and 10-care has nothing to do with trust law. But there's an influence of one on the other, because if 10-care says if you give it up and don't get anything for it, we're gonna hammer you with a penalty period. Well, when you take a $500,000 home and deed it to your trust, the trust does not pay you $500,000 for it.
That's right.
So technically, that qualifies as the definition of a divestment, because you've given it up, you've changed ownership from you, the individual, to the trustee of your trust, which is a technical change in ownership, and you didn't get anything for it.
Yeah.
Money-wise, you didn't get it.
Money-wise.
It was not a fair market value exchange, right?
Right.
And so that qualifies as a divestment. And so that's what triggers when we put property in trust, the asset, my asset protection trust, or even the ones she might have mentioned. That's why, you know, it does trigger the 5-year rule, because you've given it up. So let me make it even clearer. There are only 2 exceptions when you can give something away and not get anything for it and not trigger the penalty period, or not be subject to the 5-year rule.
Okay.
Well, actually, there's 3, but the third one is so rare. Okay.
Okay.
But I'll just stick to the 2. One is a spouse. Okay, we have spouse. If you go into care, and even then, these are crisis transfers, really, not pre-planning transfers. If somebody goes into care and you're trying to protect your assets, you can transfer all ownership you have to your spouse. Okay. And there's no penalty for that. It's an unlimited spousal transfer. We call it the spousal impoverishment rules. And that's how we get people eligible sometimes, or a lot of times. Because we can divest ourselves, it's unlimited, of hundreds of thousands of dollars to the spouse, and there's no penalty. So we can literally divest it Monday and send the application Tuesday, and we'll be eligible, because we accelerated the patient's eligibility. And the other one is a disabled child. Now, when I say disabled, you know, everybody's kid's disabled, I think, in their mind, but I'm talking about a documented disability, which is typically SSI or SSDI. Okay, if you have that, it's an unlimited transfer to that child, and so those are the only 2 ones you can do and not get a penalty. I mean, I think we ran into that when we dealt with your father-in-law, because you know, we divested some property and paid for it with a Medicaid compliant annuity.
Right.
But we had to pay for it, the penalty period. That's what the annuity was for, was pay through that penalty period that we created when we did the divestment.
That's right.
Because he didn't have any of those 2 exceptions to give to.
Right.
And if you don't, you don't. I mean, that's just the way it works.
That's the way it is.
But then, you know, now we give stuff away and intentionally create the penalty period. But, you know, we can deal with it. You know, there's things to deal with. So I'm pretty sure that's where she was going with that. But it does, you know, don't think if you just take a trust, you can't make a trust and just dump all your property into it and then tell your creditors like 10-care to go pack sand. It will, you know, that if you do that, you can do that. You know, apply. But see, that's why when we do our asset protection trust, we call it pre-planning. Pre-plan before somebody's headed to the nursing home. Pre-planning is here's the best way I define pre-planning. You come to me and you say, hey, my wife and I, you know, we worked our whole lives, and we're either about to retire or we are retired. And if one of us ever does need long-term care, not that anybody's heading that way, but if we ever do, we sure would like to protect a lot of the property that we spent our whole lives working for. That's pre-planning. You're not in care. You know, it's not foreseeable, really. It's not you're not knocking on the door. If we end up there, we want to be protected. So what we do is we put it into this trust, and we do it. And sometimes people ask me, well, when you put the property in that trust, why are you triggering a penalty period intentionally? Which is exactly what we're doing, right? We put it in, and the reason we want to trigger the penalty period intentionally is because we're pre-planning. We want to start that clock and get it over with now while we're healthy and get past it. You know, if you and your wife decide, you and Teresa decided to do that, I mean, and at your age, I don't know what it is, I know it's younger than me, but I'm just saying, at your age, if you put that property in an asset protection trust, statistically, you probably got about a 95 to 98% chance of clearing this 5 years. Statistically, I get the fact that anything can happen, but from a statistical standpoint, it's going to be in the bag. You know, that's what we want to do. And then whenever you get, if somebody does go into care, which is a crisis situation now, everything that's in the trust is not even in the calculations. Because one, the minute we put it in the trust, it was uncountable.
Right.
2, the minute we put it in the trust, it escaped the state recovery after, you know, which is what they do after death.
Right.
And 3, after being there for 60 months, now they can't even impose the penalty period on us. So It's completely free and clear. It doesn't even enter into the equation for eligibility. Now we're just gonna deal with what's not in the trust, which is usually just money in the bank, and we can usually either transfer that to the spouse or turn it into some sort of non-countable stream of income, or there's quite a few tools we can do. But we're dealing with a fraction of the estate at this point,
Right.
because we have protected everything in the estate way ahead of time. That's
Yeah.
the whole idea of the
Yeah.
pre-planning. But crisis planning is a real thing too, because things happen, or people don't know, or procrastinate, or whatever circumstances get you there. So we get a lot of folks that just say, hey, my wife or somebody, my husband, had to go to the nursing home, and it looks like he's gonna stay there, had a stroke. I mean, just a whole plethora of circumstances come up, and then it's a real thing, and it happens. And then now we're not using the trust because, the trust is sort of, it needs that 5 years
Right.
to really work. And if somebody goes in the home and you come to see me after they've been admitted, that we don't have the time. Somebody's already there. And that's the difference between pre-planning and crisis planning. But so we very rarely use the asset protection trust in crisis, although there are some circumstances where we do. But when you put property into an asset protection trust, I don't know if you remember, maybe it's time for me to go back over that trust, but when you put property in there, you are giving up your access to principal, okay? And when you do that, you've given something up, and you've not got paid for it.
Right.
So that triggers the 5-year rule. So let's get property into an asset protection trust now, get that clock ticking, and once the 5 years is clear, then those big ticket items, like the real estate, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
It's only getting higher.
Yeah.
Is our thing, are protected, and then you don't have to worry about it.
That's right.
You can't just put everything into trust Monday and check into the nursing home on Wednesday and say, everything's out of my name, I don't have anything, so I'm eligible. If the program worked like that, it was doomed to failure a long time ago. If that's the way it worked, it came out in 1965, it would have been completely defunct by 1966. I mean, because it has to fund itself somehow. It can't be. That's state recovery and all that is one of the ways to fund it. Now, the next thing somebody might ask is, can you do all that stuff? And the answer is that's not my creative thinking. That's in the TennCare Act and the Medicaid Act. Those are planning tools that are allowed.
Yes.
And in all honesty, before 2006, when we adopted the Deficit Reduction Act, we could do a lot more. They cut us off at the knees a little bit in 2006, but we still have things we can use. But we had a lot more things we could use before that. So,
Interesting stuff.
yeah, and that was before I even was in estate planning. I mean, I was practicing law back then, but I wasn't doing this kind of work. But I know what the Deficit Reduction Act did, and it did. It kind of took away some pretty cool stuff that they were using in those days.
Yeah. Well,
because they were protecting a lot of property, and of course the government can't have that. They want the property.
yeah. Yeah. That
Well,
answers the
especially
question though, but you can't really avoid the setback.
I mean, you
And the
can.
look back.
You can with planning.
With planning.
You put it in trust. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't go away, but you can plan for it.
That's right. You can
Yeah.
make it of no effect.
Right.
And again, another way to look at it, when you put this property in trust, that triggers the 5-year rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than if you gave it to your kid
Yeah.
or gave it to the church.
Yeah.
I mean, you've given it up. The only difference is when you give it to like a child, it's not yours anymore. And if it's your primary residence, the thing is, well, he's going to let me live there. Well, maybe he will, maybe he won't. I don't know about his new wife a couple years from now. Maybe she, you know what I mean? There's a lot of what ifs in that.
Yes, there
And when
is.
you do that, then people will tend to reserve a life estate, which now that's an asset that you are going to retain.
Yes.
That's going to haunt you to some extent. I mean,
Yeah.
I can deal with a life estate, but I'd rather not. But I can deal with it.
Yeah.
But if you put it in the trust, you still maintain control over it.
Yes.
And so you don't have to have a life estate. You don't have to worry about being kicked out. You can still live in the property. All those things. It's best of all worlds is the trust, in my opinion. But the divestment, TennCare doesn't say if you put property in trust, we're going to get you with the penalty period. And it doesn't say if you give it to your child or you give it to church. It just says if you have a divestment, and a divestment has a definition, which means you part with ownership of a piece of property without getting fair market value for it.
Yes.
That's what triggers it. So it's a
Interesting.
general term, and putting it in a trust satisfies that. I mean, that's settled law.
Yeah.
So giving it to your kid satisfies that. Giving it to the church. So you got the same 5-year period, It's just, sometimes there's a better way to give it away, keep a string attached to it, so if we have to undo the trust and pull it back for some reason, we can. If you give it away to somebody like the church and you need to pull it back, good luck.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Well, maybe it's possible. I mean, if you give it to your child and they say, yeah, gee, Dad, I'll help you out, Dad, I'll deed this back to you. You might, but it doesn't just apply to your home. It applies to money too. If you have a bank account and you give it away, or put it in the trust, same thing.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot to that 5-year rule. And if you stick to the fundamentals, like I just went over,
Right.
you know, it only applies to gifts. Only applies to gifts. Then it'll help you with, I think so.
Very good. Very good. By the way,
I hope that
the
answers the
phone
question.
lines again, 766-9393, while we are live here on WDXE. So you want to talk to Stan, you got a question concerning estates or estate planning. Your office is located.
Yeah, right on the square.
Yeah.
In the southeast corner of the square. We're right next to the Star Theater.
In Pulaski.
Yeah, in Pulaski.
In Pulaski,
Yes,
Tennessee.
I forgot that part.
You got to get in Pulaski, Tennessee, that's
Yeah.
right.
I mean, you got to have an office somewhere. We practice a lot of counties.
Yes.
All over the state.
I was going to say, you're available anywhere in the state pretty much.
I still have a building, I haven't gone completely online or anything, but we still have an office. It has to be somewhere. But no, people come to the seminars from all over, and people hire us to do whatever from, I mean, I don't know how many counties we deal in, quite a few.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so, what was I gonna say something. I'm having my own senior moment. Oh, I know what I was. We had a pretty banner week. We had 2 10-care approvals come through.
Oh, that's great.
And a third one, I know you remember over the last month or two, I've been keeping you posted on this one 10-care case that had been open for 1 year and 4 months.
Yeah.
And we finally got the approval, and they went all the way back and paid all back then. But see, when that happened, the person develops an unpaid balance with the facility.
Yes.
And the facility's like, how are we gonna get paid? And I said, well, there's not a whole lot of choices, and they're thinking, well, that's not fair. And the thing's, well, when you take Medicaid or 10-care patients, you gotta take all the rules that go with it.
That's the rules.
It's
that's
a guaranteed payment, but it has its own rules.
Right.
And I said, well, there's a thing called incurred medical expenses that we can apply for. And what that does is it will let the patient liability, which is typically that patient's income,
Yes.
they will divert that 10-care, instead of going to 10-care, they'll divert it toward the facility, toward the unpaid balance.
Okay.
And we got that approval this week too.
Okay.
And that's nothing, that doesn't do me or my client any good. That's just, I got the nursing home paid.
Yeah.
Which is usually not what I do, but we're all in. I like to keep a good rapport with the facilities.
Yes.
And that's something that can be done. And now whether they'll get it all, I don't know, but because you only do it for so many months. But it's more that they'll get that they weren't getting in the first
Yeah.
place.
And they are providing a service and deserve to be paid.
Now the bulk of that they got paid because remember, after 1 year and 4 months, I think the bill was 90-some thousand, pushed right at waxing $100,000 deficit because all this time they were getting the patient's income, the patient's liability, which he's going to pay forever, right?
Right.
But it was the balance between, let's just say that's $2,000. Well, and it's $10,000 a month. Well, they were racking up $8,000 a month for all this time.
Right.
Okay? And but when they approved and they went all the way back to the date of application, they went all the way back and paid the facility for those 16 months.
Oh, wow.
If there was a deficit prior to that, in other words, the person checked themselves in and became eligible, but before they actually had the filing date, you rack up a bill. This incurred medical expenses will be put toward any unpaid balance the 10-care doesn't already pay. So they got the majority of the money. They just got it 1 year and 4 months later.
Yeah.
And that makes them nervous. And I don't, any business.
Sure. You
got money that gets deferred and hangs out there in the hopper for a long time. You got to have operating capital. I get it.
Yeah, that happens in my business. We've got a deal maybe that's in the works, but it takes a lot longer to close than we anticipated, or something like that. We know maybe it's going to, but it hasn't, so nobody's got paid.
Sometimes people will come to me and we'll do this crisis planning for them. They'll say, well, I want to sell the house and I will pay you out of the...
Yeah.
So I got to wait till the house sells.
Yeah.
Which, meanwhile, everything I do, I have to do before the house ever sells.
Right.
Now, I'll entertain that concept. I don't always agree to that, but it's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
a cash flow kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because when somebody hires me for crisis, I have a crisis team. I got 3 people
Yeah.
that do that, and I have to pay them right away.
Yeah.
So if my fee gets deferred to wait to the sale of the house, that's it's something I have to be able to do.
Yes.
So I get it, but I kept telling the facility, and it's funny because I will get a call or an email from the facility practically every month, maybe every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the tone is kind of like, we need them to start paying. Something has to be wrong. It doesn't take this long to get approved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they're right. It doesn't take that long. It usually
Yeah.
takes 3 to 4 months, and
Right.
this one took a year and 4 months, 16 months.
Yeah.
And my response is always, "Hey, I'm not the one holding it up. I don't do business that way. If I could do something about it, I'd do it. I'd drop
Yes.
everything right now and do it.
Yes.
But it's not me. I'm not the one that creates these appeals or creates these problems that I have to appeal.
Right.
And there was like 5 appeals in that case. 5 appeals.
Wow.
That's my record. That's my longest one. And we were successful in all appeals, and finally they folded and threw in the towel, which is what they should have done after 3 months in the first place.
Yes.
Because nothing changed. When they finally approved, we hadn't changed anything. It's not like Congress where you sit there and you say, here's my law I want to pass. Well, we don't like it. And by the time you pass it, the thing has been completely bastardized and changed
Right.
and amended so many times it doesn't even look like the original thing, right?
Right.
None of that. Our original application stood because that's what they went back and improved a year and 4 months before.
Unbelievable.
So nothing had changed other than they said, well, this doesn't work. And so we appealed it.
Well, you may not want to get into it, but I'm just curious as to what were their issues?
Well, they were terribly egregious. I mean, this was a married person. And I'm going to tell you right now, the rules for a married person are way different than the rules for a single person.
Yes.
And the first denial we got, they treated him like a single individual.
Yeah.
Which I thought, we can just get him on the phone and get this resolved. But no, that didn't work.
Huh.
So we get into court, and so they get into court, and so in other words, you have to be below this. Oh, let me go back. The process for married people is very different, which means
Right.
we don't have to be down below this $2,000 level of countable assets before we apply if you're married.
Yes.
We just have to show that we have the ability to get down there, meaning what I said before, transfer it to the wife or something like that, or use what's called a community spouse resource allowance. We just have to show that we can do it.
Yes.
And then they approve that. Let's say in this case it was the husband. So what these do, they approve the husband. They give us what's called a grace period of 12 months to make these transfers to get him down to the eligibility standard.
Right.
Now we usually do it immediately after we get the approval, but you get 12 months to do it. And then now you get down below it. Now that's part of the eligibility process. Now they didn't treat him that way. They said we're denying him because he was like 14. There was like an IRA involved. He got $14,000 too much. We said it doesn't matter at this point in time. You have to do the resource assessment. The resource assessment, when you do this little table that you send us, it says here's what they have and here's what he has 12 months to transfer to his spouse or something wherever.
Right.
Okay? And he didn't do that. You just come right out and say he's ineligible because he's got more than $2,000, and that's the way you treat a single person.
Yeah.
Because with a single person, we don't do the resource assessment and transfer over the next 12 months because they're single. There's nobody to transfer it to.
Right.
And so they treat him like that. And I talked to myself blue in the face, and I couldn't get them to, and I couldn't understand it. That is a fundamental, basic mistake that they made.
Yeah.
It's so fundamental, it's like, I shouldn't have to be telling you this.
Yeah.
Then we went to the administrative court on appeal, and then the court agreed with them. And I'm just flabbergasted. I'm thinking, so we had to go to another court.
Yeah.
The other court got it right.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, now what happened with that one, they come back and said, well, we need this, this, and this. And I said, why? And they said, well, when we denied it, we just stopped doing the processing. So we only got this far. We barely got into it, and we denied it, so we stopped doing anything on it. So now we have to do all the stuff that we would have done if we'd have kept going and didn't stop. It gets, if it wasn't so serious and wasn't so stressful on the family, it'd be comical.
Yeah. That's.
But it is serious and it is stressful on the family,
Right.
and it's stressful in the nursing home. And of course, they don't know any of this stuff. And the whole time I'm telling my client, I'll get there. Don't worry, I'll get there. I've never failed to get anybody eligible yet. I'll get there.
Right.
I'm not dragging my feet.
Right.
And then when you have an appeal, 90 days easy before you get heard.
Yeah.
And so, they did that, and I'm trying to remember what else they came up with. There was something else. It escapes me now. But it was a relatively simple thing, and we appealed it. But by the time the appeal went back and forth, there was 5 of them, because they appealed a thing or two.
Oh, wow.
And we were successful in all of them. And finally, they just said, "Okay, you're right. He's eligible." And if he is eligible, that means he was eligible the day we put the application in.
Unbelievable.
It just took them a year and 4 months to come to that conclusion. So they went back and paid everything, which is what, we got everything we wanted, except all the stress, the family and the facility. I'd get emails all the time, and they're saying, "You must be doing something wrong. You must be screwing this up, because it doesn't. Nobody takes over a year to get approved."
Yeah.
And I kept saying, "Don't worry, we'll get them approved. Don't worry, we'll get them approved." And they're saying, "That's BS, because nobody ever goes this long. Something's wrong."
Yeah.
And I get them coming from that position.
Yeah.
I get it. And I kept telling them, "You're right, this is unusual. But we are right, and we'll be successful." And so when it came through, I mean, the family told me, "You kept saying, Mr. Stan, that you would get there. And we trusted in you, and you got there."
Yeah.
And the facility called me, and the gal in the administration called me. She said, "I just about fell off my chair when I got this approval." She said, I be honest with you, I didn't think it was possible."
Yeah.
And so, I hated for them that it was rough.
Yeah.
They had a $100,000 debt. The owners of the facility are now leaning on the administration, saying, "We need to get this guy to private pay." Now that's something we can't do during the pending process.
Yeah.
Is private pay. If we do and we get the approval, then they got to give it all back. And if they give it all back, now they just over-resource the person we got qualified. So we can't have that happen.
No.
So
Holy cow, what a complicated
I
mess.
just have to tell them, we can't pay you. The law says we just have to pay our patient liability. And again, I'm asking them to trust in me. And when when something goes into appeal, most people figure, "Yeah, well, you lost. This appeal is just your last ditch effort to try to get somewhere." Well, it's more common in TennCare cases than you think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, I've not lost a fair hearing yet.
Yeah.
And again, I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that because we have a process. And the process is, we don't send the application in until we're approved.
Yes.
I mean, until we're eligible.
Yeah.
And I know what the eligibility standards are, and so we
Yeah.
don't put it in until we satisfy all that.
Yeah.
And then I know that if they ever say no, then it's an inappropriate no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we guess we can take another phone call. And Peggy, what you got this time?
Okay, this came up because I finally, after a year probably trying to settle something with a fraud alert, because of that, I read up on this fraud alerts, and of course you can read anything, as Mr. Pierchoski says, on the internet, but I went to a reliable source. One of the reasons it said that a trust was good, better than a will, was because in a will, it can be in probate so long, and that becomes your property information becomes more available to the public. But this is not true with the trust. I just wondered how long does the trust take on average to settle compared to a will, and is that even true or not? And I'll hang up.
Okay. All right. That's a good question as far as how to settle out something.
First of all, it is true. When you're in probate, it's 100% public.
Yes.
You can go to the clerk and master's office of that county and say, "Hey, I'd like to see Mr. Stan's estate." Say I pass away and I'm in probate. And they have to show it to you. You got to get a chance to look at it. You can see whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's exposure of property then, and people can. What I see people prey on is looking to see if an 18-year-old kid is getting a big inheritance. Somebody vulnerable.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Or if the widow is ancient, pretty old, and they worry about them being senile, and they try to scam the surviving spouse out of money. That's the same thing that happened to my mother-in-law when I was talking to you, maybe a good 6 or 8 months ago. But back in March.
Yeah. Back
in March. I mean, they prey on that kind of stuff. So that the answer is yes. That is all available, and if you're worried about fraud or property fraud, it has a much higher probability of happening because there's a much freer flow of information in a probate setting. Now, a trust is a 100% probate avoidance technique. A trust is a private document. I tell people when somebody passes away and let's say before you pass away, it's 100% private. Your kids don't even have to know what it says. I tell them it's as public as you want to make it. If you want your kids to see what's in it, that's up to you.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. You can say, "You know what? You all find out in the due course of time what it says."
Yeah.
Now, at death, it's a private document. It's never recorded. It's never published. I tell people you can administer your mom and dad's trust around my conference table, or you can do it around your kitchen table. You never have to see the inside of the courthouse. You never have to disclose. The only people you have to disclose anything about the trust are the people that take under the trust. Just like in a will, you have to let them know, "Hey, you're getting $50,000. and here's the clause that says you get that. So now they know what to expect. See, because you know, if somebody says, well, we're only going to give you 25, and now they can raise a claim saying, hey, I'm not getting what I'm supposed to get.
Right.
So you tell them that they're included in the will, and this is what they're in the, I'm not the will, they're included in the trust, and this is what the trust says you get. So you have to notify them, but you only have to notify them of that provision.
Right.
You don't have to let them know what the other Tom, Dick, and Harry are getting. You know, they're not entitled to get that.
Right.
And so, but it's 100% private, and that's right, and that's what big advantage to it. It certainly is in my book. Because, you know, there are, you know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there's people out there that prey on that kind of stuff. That's a little more sophisticated praying, but it's, you know, but.
This question may not necessarily apply, but settling out a trust.
Time-wise.
Timeline.
Very rapid, or can be very rapid. If the assets are not complicated, I've seen people do it in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, once the grieving's over and you're ready to start dealing with stuff, right?
Yes.
A couple of weeks, because the way it works, I'll do it as fast as I can, but I've got a couple of minutes. But you know, somebody becomes the successor trustee.
Yes.
Let's just say I'm the second death between my wife and I pass away, and my daughter is my successor trustee. That
Yes.
job springs to life at the moment of my death.
Okay.
She's already empowered with all the rules and regulations of the trust code to deal with stuff. And they say if you have a trust and you're the successor trustee, the distribution of property is governed by that instrument, the trust.
Yes.
Not the court in probate, but that instrument. So she can go to an attorney and say, hey, I need a deed written from me, the successor trustee of this trust, to myself and my two brothers, a 1/3 undivided interest.
Yes.
It may take a couple of days, but well, maybe it would depend on the attorney.
Right.
You know, say a week or two, they'll draft this deed, and the property's been transferred.
Yeah.
Even faster, she can walk into my bank and say, I want to take over my dad's bank account.
Yeah.
And they're going to say something like, well, under what authority are you taking over Mr. Stan's bank account? I say, well, here's a document that says I'm the successor trustee of his trust. Here's a document that shows that here's the death certificate that shows he's not here anymore. And here's a bank statement saying it's in this bank.
Yeah.
They will recognize that immediately and say, okay, what do you want to do with your dad's trust bank account?
Yeah.
How much is in there? $150,000. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to write 3 checks. One to myself for 50, one to my brother for 50, one to my other brother for 50, and I want to close the account.
Yeah.
She will walk out. It maybe take 30 minutes, but she will walk out of that bank with those 3 checks, hand one to herself, one to each of her brothers, and that asset will have been distributed just like that.
Yeah.
In that same hour, practically.
Yeah.
None of this going to court, and the court has to prove everything, and you just go through the assets like that. I mean, now, the longest one I've ever seen administered took about 3 months, but it had some offshore accounts
Oh, wow.
in Cook Islands, and now that's still doable, but you got to jump through those jurisdiction hoops.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because you're dealing with a foreign jurisdiction, and they have their own rules.
Sure.
But you know, they recognize the same thing. We got it done. It just took longer. But if you don't have anything complicated like that, you know, and even owning property in other states is as simple as deeding. You know,
Yeah.
just like here, it's very rapid in comparison.
Absolutely.
So the standard for a probate is 12 to 16 months. Is the statistical average.
Very good.
So a little more than a year. So anyway, real quick, we're about to finish up, and seminar November the 22nd, Saturday 10 o'clock. Wills Trust in the Nursing Home. It's going to be at the Williamson County Public Library.
That's right.
Up in Franklin.
That's right.
And if you know Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law, give me a call. If you want to talk about anything we do, 931-363-7222, or you can go to my website, which is estateplanstand.com. And I like to always close out with doing nothing will yield a predictable result. and it's not a result you're really going to like.
Yeah, you don't want to just do nothing. And you have the opportunity, and while you have the opportunity, call Stan's office, 363-7222. Set up, you have those 15-minute or those consultations.
We schedule calls so
Schedule
that
calls.
I'll call at a scheduled time and we'll talk about the subject matter.
Absolutely. Give his office a call and set up a time to talk with Stan. And if you can, make the seminar on Saturday, 22nd of November at the Franklin, the Williamson County Public Library. You don't want to do that. And again, Stan Pierchoski from Pierchoski Estate Law, Pulaski, Tennessee, and on the historic downtown square there. And we appreciate you being with us again, Stan.
We'll do it again next Friday.
Yes, indeed. We got a few more seconds. Again, that phone number, 363-7222. The website, estateplanstand.com. You want to get there as quick as you can.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
Perfect.
How much time will it get?
Good timing.
I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. Sentencing is this hour in federal court for Sean Diddy Combs, who has a message.